There is a reason the smile is the most universal expression across every culture, every language, every boundary of history. A smile is not just the curve of lips. It is the softest armor, the gentlest mask, the most efficient disguise ever invented by human nature. When a stranger smiles at you, something in your body relaxes before your mind can think. Walls lower, suspicion softens, and the possibility of connection briefly overshadows the instinct for defense. We are programmed to see the smile as safe, as good, as kind. But that programming is precisely why the smile has been turned into a tool of power. Behind the warmth of teeth and lips, there may be calculation, there may be deception, there may be ambition hidden so deeply that even the one smiling no longer recognizes the performance. What appears as ease, what appears as friendliness, may be nothing more than the quiet staging ground of control. History has been written not only by men with swords, but also by those who knew how to shape their faces into masks of ease, hiding steel beneath velvet. A dictator greets his people with warmth while tightening the chains around their lives. A rival in business shakes your hand with perfect politeness while already plotting the end of your future. A lover smiles to comfort you even as they withhold the truth that will fracture your trust. The smile is a theater, and like all theater, it is meant to distract, to redirect, to control where your eyes fall and what your mind believes. It is not always false. Sometimes it is genuine. Sometimes it carries real joy. But the brilliance of the smile as a mask is that you can never know for certain. That uncertainty is where power hides. It is in the gap between what you see and what is real, between what you feel and what has been chosen for you to feel. Power understands that human beings crave simplicity. We want to believe that what we see is what is real, that the smile in front of us reflects the heart behind it. But nothing is more dangerous than mistaking appearance for essence. The mask of ease is dangerous because it requires no force, no confrontation, no conflict. It does not demand you to fight or resist. It asks you to relax, to surrender your vigilance, to trust what seems harmless. A smile is a gentle command, one that does not sound like an order, yet carries the weight of obedience. Think of how quickly a room changes when someone powerful enters and greets everyone with charm. Suddenly, the tension fades, and the collective mood bends toward their presence. Smiles create the illusion of harmony, but illusions are rarely neutral. They are built with purpose, directed like weapons, sharpened by intent. A leader who smiles at his followers can disguise his tyranny as benevolence. A predator who smiles at his prey can disguise his danger as comfort. A manipulator who smiles at his victim can disguise their cruelty as affection. And each time, the one on the receiving end feels not attacked but chosen, as though the smile were proof of inclusion, of acceptance, of safety. Yet beneath this ease lies a quiet violence, the erasure of your suspicion, the softening of your defenses, the redirection of your choices. What you think is freedom is already steering into the hands of another. The mask of ease is not about convincing you of a lie directly. It is about creating an atmosphere where lies are not even questioned. When you are disarmed by the warmth of a smile, you are less likely to look for the knife behind the back, less likely to ask where the path is leading, less likely to resist what feels so gentle. And that is the genius of this mask. The tragedy is that we welcome the mask. We long for it, because reality without masks is unbearable. If every smile were stripped away, if every face showed its raw truth, the world would feel unlivable. Brutality without disguise is too heavy for the human spirit, so we allow the mask of ease to survive. But this survival has a cost. For every genuine smile, there are 1,000 that conceal intentions we cannot see. The neighbor who smiles while envying your progress. The colleague who smiles while undermining your reputation. The partner who smiles while carrying a secret in silence. Each of these encounters seems ordinary, almost harmless, yet each shapes your life more than the overt aggressions you fear. We are taught to prepare for open conflict, but the war of masks is fought quietly, invisibly, and we lose without ever realizing we were on the battlefield. And the masters of this war understand timing better than anyone. They know when to smile, when to soften their presence, when to tilt their head in feigned warmth, when to let silence stretch just long enough for you to mistake it as agreement. They do not dominate through raw strength. They dominate by scripting the play in which you willingly accept your role. You believe you are acting freely, but your decisions have already been rehearsed. Your comfort is the stage, your trust is the script, your hope is the applause. And when the curtain finally falls, you look back and wonder how you were led so far away from your own will. This is why the mask of ease is the most powerful disguise, because it does not only hide what lies beneath, it creates a new reality in which you no longer feel the need to look beneath at all. It trains you to mistake comfort for truth, friendliness for safety, charm for sincerity. In the end, the mask does not merely cover the face. It reshapes the world around it, until your very perception has been rewritten. Influence is rarely carried by force. It does not slam the table. It does not roar across the room. It does not demand attention with threats. True influence slides into place quietly, like a hand resting lightly on your shoulder, guiding without pressure, shaping without resistance. The brilliance of this grip is that you do not feel it as control. You feel it as belonging, as warmth, as closeness. The smile that lingers a moment longer, the voice that softens at just the right time, the presence that reassures instead of intimidates. All of these are threads woven into an invisible net. And once that net surrounds you, you stop asking questions, because you no longer sense you are being held. You think you are walking freely, yet your steps trace a path someone else has already drawn. This is why those who master charm wield more enduring power than those who rule with fear. Fear creates resistance, but comfort creates surrender. A tyrant may bend people with terror, but the one who cloaks his ambition in ease bends them without struggle. And when there is no struggle, there is no suspicion. Smiles, gestures, tones. These are the instruments of influence, the subtle levers that move entire lives without leaving fingerprints. You may think you are deciding, but you are only choosing from the options already placed before you. The gentle grip is not about crushing you. It is about shaping you so delicately that you do not realize you are being shaped at all. That is why it is more dangerous than force. You can fight force, but how do you fight a kindness that feels genuine, a warmth that seems harmless, a friendliness that makes you want to follow? The answer is that most people never fight it. They embrace it. They welcome it. And in doing so, they walk willingly into the arms of power, never noticing that the very smile which comforted them was also the rope that bound them. What makes this gentle grip so effective is its ability to disguise itself as your own desire. When someone smiles at you in a way that feels sincere, when their words echo what you secretly wanted to hear, when their presence makes your guard melt without reason, you believe you are choosing to trust them. But the truth is different. You are not choosing. You are being chosen. Influence hides itself in your own reflection, making you think the path was always yours, when in reality it has been laid before you with deliberate care. A ruler who inspires devotion without threats, a lover who secures loyalty without demands, a leader who convinces the crowd without raising his voice. All of them understand this principle. People will surrender more completely when they believe the surrender is their own decision. And nothing creates this illusion of freedom more effectively than charm. It is the invisible thread tying your emotions to their will, ensuring you feel both safe and grateful while unknowingly being directed. This is why so many fall into the same trap. They mistake kindness for purity, charm for honesty, and warmth for love. But warmth can be calculated, kindness can be staged, and charm can be sharpened into the deadliest tool of domination. A soft tone can silence your doubts more effectively than a command. A reassuring gesture can bind your loyalty more firmly than a chain. And the smile, the quiet promise of ease, can make you walk willingly into your own captivity. You do not resist because you feel no danger. You do not question because you feel no threat. You do not defend yourself because the gentle grip has convinced you there is nothing to defend against. And so, you allow yourself to be shaped, led, and contained, never realizing that the comfort you embrace is the very mechanism of control. The danger of this unseen grip is not just in how it guides you, but in how it rewrites your sense of reality. Once you accept the smile as sincerity, once you accept the warmth as truth, you begin to mistrust your own suspicion. Doubt becomes a burden you feel guilty for carrying, and the person who wears the mask of ease becomes the anchor of your perception. You interpret their actions through the lens they have provided, and every gentle gesture reinforces the illusion that they cannot mean harm. In this way, the gentle grip does more than steer you. It changes the way you see the world itself. You become blind not because your eyes are closed, but because your sight has been replaced. This blindness is what allows the grip to tighten, slowly, silently, invisibly, until it no longer feels like something external. It feels like your own will, your own thought, your own decision. And that is the genius of influence hidden beneath charm. It convinces you that the cage was always your home. By the time you notice the subtle shifts, the choices you would not have made, the paths you would not have taken, the silence you would not have accepted, the pattern has already become permanent. You no longer question the grip because it has woven itself into your identity. And yet, beneath it all, power waits patiently, feeding off your trust, cloaking its ambition in gestures that feel harmless. This is why those who know the nature of masks never take a smile at face value. They understand that the most dangerous form of control is the one you welcome, the one that feels like safety, the one that carries no sharp edges. For in that softness lies the deepest cut. The gentle grip does not shout, it does not strike, it does not burn, it only holds, and it holds so carefully that you forget you are being held at all. Not every smile is meant to comfort you. Some are curved in such a way that they chill more than they warm, that unsettle more than they reassure. This is the darker side of human expression, the side that turns what should be a gesture of peace into an unspoken warning. A smile can be sharper than a blade when it carries no innocence behind it. It does not need to declare hostility with words. It suggests it with silence, with the faint curl of the lips that tells you without speaking, I know something you don't. I hold something you can't touch. I have already decided how this ends. And you understand it instantly, even if you pretend not to. The human mind is wired to interpret threats, to detect subtle signals, to sense the imbalance of power even when nothing is spoken. A smile wielded as a weapon becomes a language of its own, one that speaks intention rather than comfort. Think of the predator who looks at his prey and lets the corners of his mouth rise just enough to remind the other of their helplessness. Think of the rival who smiles at you across the table, not to welcome you, but to warn you that the game has already been played in their favor. Think of the person who hides cruelty beneath the faintest expression of amusement, forcing you to question whether you are imagining the danger or sensing it correctly. In every case, the smile carries more force than an open threat, because an open threat can be challenged, but an unspoken one cannot. You cannot fight what is not said. You cannot defend yourself against what exists only in implication. And so, the smile becomes a weapon of psychological dominance, a performance that traps you in uncertainty. You are left wondering whether you are paranoid, whether you are weak, whether you are simply overreacting, while all the while, the one who smiles has already won, because they have forced you into silence without lifting a single hand. What makes these silent threats more sinister than overt aggression is that they live in the shadows of ambiguity. When someone shouts at you, the hostility is clear, and you can prepare yourself to respond. But when someone smiles at you with eyes that do not match, with timing that feels deliberate, with a calmness that conceals something unspoken, you are left to wrestle with uncertainty. That uncertainty is not weakness, it is the very design. A smile that hides a threat destabilizes you because it forces your mind into two directions at once. On the surface, you want to trust the gesture, to accept its apparent kindness, because that is what society has trained you to do. Yet beneath the surface, your instincts whisper that something is wrong. You hesitate, caught between the comfort of appearances and the discomfort of intuition. And while you hesitate, the one who smiles gains the upper hand. Their silence becomes your prison, because in the absence of open hostility, you have no proof to hold against them. If you confront them, you look foolish. If you ignore them, you risk being blindsided. This is how power hides within the smile, not by erasing suspicion, but by making suspicion powerless. The threat remains invisible, and because it is invisible, it cannot be resisted directly. Instead, it corrodes you from within, making you doubt yourself, making you cautious in ways that give your adversary more room to maneuver. And the more you second-guess, the deeper their advantage grows. The smile, then, is not only a signal but a strategy. It keeps you quiet, it keeps you small, it keeps you circling your own doubt while they proceed with certainty. That is why some of the most dangerous individuals never raise their voices, never reveal their hostility outright. They do not need to. Their smiles carry the weight of all the words they never speak, and those unsaid words echo louder in your mind than any spoken threat ever could. The cruel genius of a threatening smile is that it forces you to become complicit in your own intimidation. The gesture itself is small, almost dismissible, but the weight it carries is built by your own mind. You supply the fear, the memory, the associations, the dread. The smile plants the seed, and you nurture it with every anxious thought that follows. In this way, the one who wields such a smile does not have to act further. You complete the work for them. You silence yourself. You restrain your own actions. You bend without being commanded, because the uncertainty has already begun to shape your behavior. This is why unspoken threats are more enduring than explicit ones. A clear threat ends the ambiguity. It demands a response. But a smile that carries menace leaves you suspended in doubt. And in that suspension, you become cautious, hesitant, reactive. Over time, this corrodes your confidence, making you smaller while the other grows larger. Entire hierarchies can be built on such exchanges. The ruler who silences dissent with a smile rather than a sword. The rival who unsettles opponents without ever raising their voice. The abuser who maintains control not through blows, but through the chilling amusement that reminds you of what they are capable of. And perhaps the most frightening truth is this. Once you learn to recognize the weaponized smile, you begin to see it everywhere. In politics, in workplaces, in relationships, in moments where power wishes to hide itself in plain sight. The smile is not always comfort. It is not always peace. Sometimes it is the quiet reminder that you are not as free as you think. And when you finally realize that the most dangerous threats are the ones that do not declare themselves, you understand why the world bows more often to those who smile than to those who shout. For it is easier to resist a fist than it is to resist a face that pretends to be kind while telling you, without words, that you have already lost. Every smile that lingers longer than it should, every gesture of ease offered at the right moment, every carefully measured word of reassurance carries something beneath it, intention. Rarely do people show you only what is natural. More often they show you what is useful. Behind the appearance of warmth lies the quiet machinery of thought, turning gears that calculate what can be gained and what can be concealed. To most, this remains invisible because we are trained to see charm as spontaneous, as natural, as effortless. But nothing about influence is effortless. It is rehearsed, refined, perfected over countless exchanges until the mask no longer feels like a mask even to the one who wears it. This is why we are so often fooled. We do not realize how much calculation goes into the smile we receive. The rival who waits until your guard is low before offering kindness. The leader who times their show of vulnerability only when it will deepen loyalty. The manipulator who withholds approval until your hunger for it makes you pliable. These are not accidents. They are strategies, and strategies require thought, foresight, and design. What looks like ease is often the most intricate performance of all, because the goal is not only to control your perception of the moment, but to control the decisions you will make tomorrow. Calculations of this kind do not shout their presence. They whisper beneath the surface of gestures too small for most to question. Yet those whispers direct entire outcomes. A nod here, a smile there, a pause that feels insignificant but shifts the tone of an entire conversation. All of it is chosen, all of it is deliberate. And in that choice, power is exercised invisibly. You walk away thinking you have witnessed sincerity, when in reality you have stepped into someone else's design, mapped out long before you entered the room. The unsettling truth is that most of the moves that shape our lives are decided long before we even recognize the game. A smile that seems spontaneous may have been chosen for its timing, its setting, its impact. The calculation lies not only in what is expressed, but in what is withheld. A skilled manipulator knows that silence can be as powerful as speech, that restraint can wound more deeply than an attack, and that a carefully timed kindness can outweigh 100 harsh truths. They study the rhythm of others, when they are weakest, when they are most eager, when they crave approval, when they long for belonging. And then, at the perfect moment, they strike with softness instead of steel. The genius of this strategy is that it does not feel like a strike at all. It feels like salvation, like relief, like being seen. Yet behind it all, every move is measured. You think you are sharing intimacy, but in reality you are offering data. You think you are forming a bond, but in truth you are being assessed, weighed, and categorized according to your vulnerabilities. The smile is simply the delivery system, the mask that makes the calculation invisible. This is why those who seek power rarely appear hurried or flustered. Their calm presence is not born of peace, but of planning. They already know the direction they want you to move. They already know which words to avoid and which silences to let stretch. They already know that the image of ease is the most convincing disguise for strategy. And because of that, by the time you notice the pattern, the outcome has already been written. You were not responding to a person in the moment. You were responding to a plan crafted long before the first smile ever appeared. The most dangerous part of hidden calculations is not simply that they exist, but that they are invisible until the damage is irreversible. You recall the laughter, the warmth, the comfort of moments you believed were genuine, only to realize later they were carefully scripted to disarm you. The smile that eased your doubts was not born of affection, but of timing, placed there to quiet suspicion at the precise instant it threatened to surface. The hand placed on your shoulder was not reassurance, but reinforcement, a subtle weight added to tilt you toward compliance. The compliments you received were not spontaneous reflections of admiration, but seeds planted to grow dependency, to make you crave the voice that supplied them. Once this realization strikes, it rewrites your memory of the past, staining what was once innocent with the ink of calculation. Yet the true cruelty of it is how effective such strategies remain even after you see them. Because the human mind longs to believe in sincerity, because we ache to trust smiles and warmth, we often surrender again despite our knowledge. The smile reappears, and a part of us still wishes it is real this time. This is how power sustains itself, not through obvious force, but through repeated rehearsals of charm, kindness, and ease, which erode our defenses long before we recognize the erosion. By the time the mask is revealed, the structure beneath it has already taken hold, and escaping it feels like betraying the very comfort we once depended on. What you thought was freedom of choice turns out to have been the result of calculations made in silence, with you as both the target and the tool. And that is why those who hide behind smiles rarely lose. For every smile is not just a gesture. It is an equation, a strategy, a weapon so subtle that even as it wounds, it convinces you it was love. The first instinct of power is not to strike, but to observe. Those who seek control begin as watchers, standing just outside the circle of trust, studying the movements, the gestures, the hesitations that betray hidden fears. They know that open aggression invites resistance, that force awakens suspicion, and that the mind guarded is the mind that resists. So instead, they take the softer path. They smile. A smile does not demand, it invites. It signals harmlessness. It erases the sharp edges of intention. It whispers to the cautious mind that there is nothing here to fear. The watcher, cloaked in friendliness, dismantles defenses one by one without ever laying a hand on them. You think you are safe because you see no weapons, no threats, no storms on the horizon. But this safety is the illusion crafted for you, the velvet curtain behind which calculations are unfolding. The smile, so small and so ordinary, becomes the most efficient disguise ever created, for it convinces the prey to lower its own guard willingly. And what is more tragic than a fortress that opens its gates from within, believing it has nothing to fear? To disarm the watcher is to deny them the disguise of ease, but most never even notice the disguise is there until it is too late. The world has trained us to associate smiles with kindness, with acceptance, with belonging, and so we do not question the one who smiles at us. We lean closer, we reveal more, we relax. And by relaxing, we surrender the one thing we were meant to protect, our vigilance. This is how power slips in, not through war, but through warmth. Not through threat, but through charm. And when the watcher has learned all he needs, the smile remains, not as a gift, but as the mask that kept you blind. To understand how the watcher disarms us, you must first understand how easily the mind mistakes friendliness for truth. We are creatures wired to seek safety in others, to read warmth as sincerity, and to interpret a smile as proof of harmless intent. From childhood, we are taught that smiles are gateways to trust. Parents reward us with them. Teachers reassure us through them. Strangers use them to bridge silence. And so, without knowing it, we carry this reflex into adulthood. The watcher exploits this reflex, letting the smile precede every move. They need not argue. They need not push. They need not command. All they must do is create the impression that they are harmless, and in this impression, resistance dissolves. It is not simply that the smile looks kind. It is that the smile carries centuries of human association, conditioning that has trained us to lower our guard in its presence. This is why deception wrapped in charm is more effective than deception wrapped in threats. Threats awaken suspicion, but charm buries it. The watcher collects information while you are busy enjoying the comfort of their expression, harvesting secrets from the cracks in your voice, the shifts in your eyes, the pauses in your words. And because you feel unthreatened, you reveal more than you should. The irony is brutal. In your attempt to be open, to be understood, you hand over the very tools of your undoing. This is why those who smile, while they calculate, rarely face resistance. By the time you realize they were watching, not simply sharing, the damage has been done. You cannot take back the details you gave freely. You cannot rebuild the walls you lowered yourself, and you cannot erase the memory they now hold of your weakness. In this way, the smile does not just disarm you, it arms them. The most terrifying part of being disarmed by a watcher is that you do not realize it has happened until the balance of power has shifted. You only recognize the trap when you are already caught in it. What felt like harmless conversation now replays in your memory like evidence. Every laugh, every confession, every vulnerable moment suddenly looks different in hindsight. The smile you trusted becomes a symbol of betrayal, and you ask yourself how you could not have seen the calculation behind it. But this question misses the truth. You were never meant to see it. The design of the watcher's strategy is not brute deception, but psychological camouflage. The disguise is so familiar, so woven into your instincts, that you never consider questioning it. That is why the smile is more powerful than the sharpest weapon, because it asks nothing of you except to relax. And in relaxing, you surrender everything. By the time you grow suspicious, you are already entangled, bound not by chains but by the secrets you revealed, the trust you offered, the dependencies you allowed. And when you finally see the manipulation for what it is, you cannot undo the past. This is the silent victory of the watcher. You feel the shame of betrayal and the shame of your own blindness. Yet here lies the cruelest truth. Even after such a revelation, you may still be swayed again by the same smile, because part of you longs to believe it is real. That longing is the watcher's greatest weapon, the weakness they never need to manufacture, only exploit. And so the cycle continues. The watcher smiles, the prey relaxes, and power flows invisibly toward the one who knows how to look harmless while holding every intention of control. Power rarely appears as a demand. More often, it arrives disguised as a gift. A favor offered when you were desperate, a hand extended when you felt you might fall, a kindness granted at the very moment you needed it most. These gestures feel like lifelines, and at first, you receive them with relief, sometimes even with joy. You tell yourself that you have encountered generosity, that you have been given something freely, something without strings. Yet nothing given in moments of weakness is ever truly free. The one who provides remembers what you owe, even if you do not. The smile that accompanies the favor, the warmth that softens its delivery, becomes the silent ledger upon which the debt is recorded. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to carry the weight of obligation. You think you are free because you were not asked for repayment outright, but this is how the trap is set. Repayment will not be demanded immediately. It will be allowed to grow inside you like a shadow, twisting your sense of loyalty, shaping your decisions, and silencing your resistance. Gratitude becomes the leash you place around your own neck, tightening it with every act of kindness you recall. You begin to hesitate before saying no. You begin to feel guilt when you imagine stepping away. You begin to believe that to resist would make you ungrateful, dishonorable, undeserving of the generosity you were shown. The one who smiled when they offered help does not need to remind you of your debt, because you remind yourself. In this way, the invisible chains of gratitude are forged, link by link, until you move not from freedom, but from duty, not because you must, but because you believe you should. And so, what began as a gift becomes a prison made of your own loyalty, built upon the belief that you owe someone not only your thanks but your obedience. The true brilliance of power wrapped in generosity is that it does not feel like power at all. When a ruler imposes taxes, the people grumble. When a master commands, the servant dreams of freedom. But when someone cloaks control inside kindness, resistance becomes unthinkable, almost shameful. You tell yourself that to push back against this person would make you cruel, heartless, or ungrateful. In this way, the debt is not enforced from the outside, but from within. You carry it in your own conscience, binding yourself with ropes that cannot be cut because they are tied around your very sense of morality. You think of the times they smiled when they gave, how their presence seemed gentle, how their gestures seemed selfless. You replay those moments not as transactions, but as blessings, forgetting that blessings can be sharpened into weapons in the hands of those who understand psychology. And this is where the cruelty lies. You will protect the one who controls you, defend them from accusation, even excuse their manipulations, because to admit the truth would force you to admit that your gratitude was misplaced, that you were not loved but leveraged. Many never reach that realization. They spend their lives honoring chains disguised as kindness, mistaking their servitude for loyalty and their weakness for virtue. They convince themselves that obedience is noble, that repayment is duty, and that submission is gratitude. But the reality is colder. Their choices were rewritten by the invisible pressure of obligation. They gave not because they wanted to, but because they felt they owed. And all along, the one who gave knew this would happen. They knew the smile would soften suspicion, the favor would plant a seed, and the seed would grow into a forest of silent chains. What looks like generosity is often nothing more than the most efficient strategy of dominance, because when you are enslaved by gratitude, you enslave yourself. What makes these chains unbreakable is not the strength of the giver, but the weakness of the receiver. For once gratitude takes root, it entwines itself with your identity, shaping the way you see yourself in relation to the one who helped you. You do not simply remember the favor. You carry it like a mirror, measuring your worth against it, reminding yourself of what you were without it. And in that reminder lies the trap. To reject the giver's influence feels like rejecting your own survival, your own story of being saved. The smile you recall, the warmth that seemed genuine, becomes the anchor that keeps you tethered even when the rope burns your skin. You convince yourself that your debt is endless, that no act of repayment could ever equal what you were given. And so you remain caught in a cycle of obedience that feels moral but is in truth mechanical. The giver knows this. They do not have to threaten you, nor do they have to remind you of your debt. They can continue to smile, to act with softness, to let you chain yourself tighter with every decision you make under the weight of obligation. And if you ever dare to resist, they need only remind you of their kindness, and the guilt will silence you before rebellion can grow. This is why gratitude, when manipulated, becomes more destructive than fear. Fear can ignite defiance, but gratitude disguised as kindness extinguishes it. It replaces anger with guilt, rebellion with hesitation, and independence with a distorted sense of honor. You do not rise against the one who smiled at you in your moment of need. Instead, you kneel, believing it is the noble thing to do. And thus, gratitude transforms into shackles, each link invisible yet unbreakable, forged not from steel but from memory. The chains remain as long as you believe you owe, and the belief endures because the smile that created it still lingers in your mind. The greatest tyrants are not those who rule with iron fists or thunderous decrees, but those who govern from the shadows of perception. The visible tyrant, the one who shouts commands and raises armies, awakens opposition. Their cruelty is obvious, and because it is obvious, resistance gathers against it. But the hidden tyrant rules differently. They do not raise their voice. They do not flaunt their chains. They do not expose their weapons. Instead, they smile. They move in silence, disguising authority as suggestion, cloaking demands as kindness, and replacing visible dominance with subtle guidance that feels voluntary. What they desire is not your fear, but your willingness. Not forced obedience, but obedience that feels chosen. And to achieve this, they remain hidden, invisible in their intentions, while you imagine you are acting of your own free will. You carry out their designs not because you are commanded, but because you believe you want to. This is the purest form of tyranny, when control feels like freedom. The mask of warmth, the aura of harmlessness, the appearance of generosity. These are the tools that replace open rule with covert domination. You never rebel against them because you never realize you are ruled. And in this blindness lies the perfection of their strategy. A cage built of bars invites escape, but a cage built of smiles and suggestion feels like shelter. You do not seek to leave. You seek to stay, convinced that safety lies in the very hands that bind you. This is why the tyranny of the hidden endures longer than the rule of iron. It requires no armies, no whips, no walls. Only perception, only illusion, only the quiet art of making you believe you are free. What makes this invisible rule so suffocating is not simply that it exists, but that it rewrites your very sense of self. When you live under the hand of the obvious tyrant, you know you are oppressed. You feel the chains, you taste the bitterness of subjugation, and even in despair, the possibility of rebellion lives within you. But under the hidden tyrant, There is no bitterness, because you are convinced you are not chained at all. You look at your choices and see freedom, not realizing that your desires have been engineered, your loyalties manipulated, your fears carefully sharpened to keep you in line. The smile you trust, the reassurance you lean on, the small favors you accept. Each one shapes you quietly, molding your actions so that you never even think of resistance. And when resistance does cross your mind, it feels like betrayal, like an act of cruelty against someone who has only ever appeared gentle. This is the brilliance of the hidden tyrant. They make rebellion feel immoral. You suppress your own instincts, silence your own doubts, and in doing so, become the enforcer of your own captivity. They do not need to watch you every hour, because the image of their kindness lives in your memory, guiding your behavior even in their absence. You anticipate their reactions. You adjust yourself to please them. You censor your words before they are spoken. Slowly, the line between their will and your will dissolves, until you can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. And yet, you remain convinced you are free. That is the true tyranny. The chains you cannot see, the rule you do not question, the prison you mistake for sanctuary. The cruelest truth about hidden tyranny is that even when glimpses of its surface, most people still turn away. It is easier to cling to the illusion of kindness than to face the discomfort of betrayal. To admit that the smile was a mask, that the generosity was calculation, that the warmth was camouflage, is to confront the possibility that you were never free, that your trust was nothing more than a lever used against you. And this realization cuts deeper than any visible chain ever could, because it forces you to question not just the one who ruled over you, but yourself. You wonder how you could have been so blind, how you could have surrendered so easily, how you could have mistaken comfort for care and manipulation for love. But the hidden tyrant counts on this shame, knowing it will silence you even further. Few will admit aloud that they were controlled without knowing it, because to do so feels humiliating. And so, the silence continues. The tyranny endures, not because it is unbreakable, but because its victims prefer denial over awakening. This is the genius of power when it hides behind charm. It creates willing captives who defend the very structure that imprisons them. Even when the truth presses against their minds, they soothe themselves with memories of kindness, with fragments of warmth, with the belief that maybe it was real after all. And in that self-deception, the chains grow tighter. The tyranny of the hidden is not sustained by cruelty, but by comfort, not by fear, but by the desperate human need to believe in goodness. And as long as that need remains unexamined, the one who smiles while calculating will rule without resistance, conquering not through violence, but through the quiet surrender of those who never realized they were conquered at all.